Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's your announcer, Paige Williams, here to talk to you about the Columbian Exchange game that just finished. As you can see, the lineup from the game is on the screen. It was the Old World versus the New World in a thrilling match. The Columbian Exchange refers to the exchange of goods between the Old World and the New World beginning in the mid-15th century and lasting until the mid-18th century. This period of time began when Christopher Columbus arrived in the New World in 1492. His journey was funded by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. In 1519, Hernan Cortez arrived at the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. By 1520, half of the Aztecs living in the city were suffering from smallpox, which was brought over from Spain by an infected soldier. Smallpox arrived in the Incan Empire in 1525, killing over 200,000 people. Therefore, smallpox was one of the greatest reasons for the downfall of both the Aztec and the Inca empires. Francisco Pizarro also conquered parts of the Incan Empire, which further weakened it. Measles was introduced to the New World in the 1530s, followed by diphtheria, typhus, influenza, and pulmonary plagues. In 1539, Hernando de Soto led an expedition to North America in search of gold and a water route through North America to China. From 1616 to 1617, epidemics nearly exterminated northeastern indigenous groups in North America. The next European to return to this region after de Soto was the French explorer La Salle in 1682, who wanted to claim land for France. In 1700, towards the end of the Columbian Exchange, the Comanche became the first Native American tribe to fully utilize the horse. So, we've talked about the game and players like Columbus, Cortez, Pizarro, de Soto, and the King Queen, but there were other players who had a role. John Winthrop led a migration of Puritans from England to America, and he was the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de La Salle, was a French explorer and colonist who established French claims to lands around the Great Lakes in the Mississippi Valley. And, as you can see, there are 3 positions with question marks over them. The names of these players will not be released because their manager does not want them to be focused on the press. He wishes for them to be focused on the next game. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have time for. Please tune in later for the second Columbian Exchange game of the day. See you then.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Columbian Exchange. Today, the 2 teams competing will be the Old World and the New World. In order to win, the teams must get their goods to the other countries as fast as possible. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our first round. This round will consist of the contestants picking up an item from the bucket, explaining the item, and then having to hula hoop across the field to put it in the correct bucket. The red bucket is the New World, the blue bucket is the Old World. The contestant with the slowest time will be eliminated. Let's go to our first contestant who's in the starting stands, Nidi Gajakas, or better known as the Pink Panther.
This is a tiara. The tiara symbolizes the power of the crown or the monarch. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain financed Christopher Columbus's expedition to the East Indies. There was also a great rise of capitalism, the system based on private ownership and investment of resources for profit. Governments were no longer the only owners of wealth, and now merchants invested their money in trade and exploration. The increasing economic activity led to inflation as well. Before the Columbian Exchange, American societies were self-governing, but after they were controlled by wealthy Europeans. Monarchs restricted economic activities in colonies, and colonists were forbidden from selling raw materials to other countries and manufacturing goods.
Ready, set, go!
And now we have our second contestant, Kevin Alcala, or the Blue Typhoon.
Christianity spread through the New World immediately after being discovered by the Europeans. One of the 3 main goals was to spread God's word in the New World, and they used everything necessary to do this. Most explorers from the Old World used peaceful tactics, but some were not as tolerant and used violence. The Europeans' determination is what made Christianity spread so rapidly, even though it was not welcomed initially.
Ready, set, go!
Inspiring words, Blue Typhoon. Next up in our starting stands, we have our third contestant, Claire Warmouth, or otherwise known as Neon Bolt.
This is sugarcane. The sugarcane represents the new goods, mainly fruit and other plants, that were introduced in the New World. Settlers from the Old World brought items like wheat, grapes, olives, and other veggies to the Americas. The New World received items like rice, bananas, coconuts, and sugar from Asia and Africa. Sugar had an important impact and became the driving force in New World economies, especially the Caribbean. Sugar in Brazil led to a massive sugarcane industry and led to a thriving economy. At that time, Portugal controlled Brazil, and mercantilism was used, where colonies could only trade with their mother countries. Aside from plants and fruit items, livestock, like cattle, horses, and pigs, were introduced to the Americas. Horses revolutionized the Americas and helped in travel, trade, and economy.
Ready, set, go! Thanks, Jamble. Now we have our fourth contestant, Neva Macho, or otherwise known as the Chelsea Lion.
These are tissues. When the Europeans arrived in the New World, they brought along new diseases and viruses that the natives had no resistance against. Because of their inability to fight foreign invaders, the natives were extremely susceptible to new diseases. This crippled the size of the native population and allowed Europeans to more easily take their land and destroy their society.
Set, go!
Now we're in round two. The contestants who have advanced are Pink Panther, the Chelsea Lion, and Blue Typhoon. Let's go to them now.
This is an alphabet puzzle. The alphabet was first introduced to the New World by the Europeans who wished to create treaties between themselves and the natives. They used it to teach them the purpose of trading and to convert them to Christianity, which made them superior to the natives. The bringing of the alphabet led to the development of the first syllabary of the Cherokee language, making it the first written languages natives had ever
Ready,
seen.
set, go!
The original Europeans that traveled to the New World were the explorers who discovered and settled the land, like Columbus, Cavalier, and Pizarro. These individuals paved the way for other settlers by establishing ports and towns for their country.
Ready, set, go! Potato represented the crops that were traded to the Old World. The New World's contribution consisted mainly of plants. Maize, manioc, and potatoes completely changed Old World diets and became staples for many peasants. Beans, corn, squash, tobacco, and cotton were also introduced in the Old World. These crops highly improved economies. With the introduction of cotton, Europeans started spinning their own and geared up the Industrial Revolution. Mechanization helped the cotton industry grow, and cotton became the most powerful crop. Potatoes were especially important in Ireland, Africa, and Asia. The introduction of potatoes and manioc helped sustain the peasants, therefore keeping the economy afloat. The crops were rich in calories and helped sustain the growing population.
And now we advance on to the final round, round three. The contestants who remain are Blue Typhoon and the Pink Panther. Let's go see them at the starting line.
The Columbian Exchange brought cultural changes to both the Old and the New World. Ways of life were learned and exchanged going both directions. The Europeans brought a form of civilization to the natives of the Americas and brought them new goods that changed the way they lived, such as firearms. The natives sent back with them new foods that changed the dependency and how people lived. For example, Italians were introduced to the tomato and marinara sauce was born.
Because the native population shrunk so rapidly, the new influx of Europeans created a new class of wealthier merchants. This allowed for an increase in business activity and for towns and cities to grow. These wealthy merchants held positions of power in their growing towns and
Ready,
cities.
set, go!
Here I am, ladies and gentlemen, with our winner of the Columbian Exchange, Blue Typhoon. How do you feel?
I feel great.
Good. Glad to see that you've won, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you next week for an all-new episode of the Columbian Exchange. Bye now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Match of the Day. I'm here with Neely to discuss today's action. The highlight of today was the Columbian Exchange game.
I agree. You know, Neva, there was some stiff competition, but I think that the winner was expected. Throughout the whole game, it was evident that Blue Typhoon was going to win. The players brought out many valid points, but what do you think about them in a geographical sense?
Well, the Columbian Exchange had a geographical impact that was a bit overlooked because of all the other economic and social impacts. However, geography played a huge role in the Columbian Exchange. During this event, food items and livestock were being transported between regions and across oceans. New foods were being introduced in new regions, and many had immediate impacts. In the Old World, especially in Ireland, people became extremely dependent on the potato because it was a high-calorie crop that could sustain everyone. However, this dependence led to a famine. Due to this famine, many Irish people were forced to migrate to other countries. The population of Ireland changed dramatically after this mass migration. Also, with the introduction of sugar in the New World, a new industry was formed. This led to changes in the land when areas had to be cleared for plantations. Also, many people were enslaved. The southern part of the U.S., the Caribbean islands, and many northern states in South America became known for slavery. In the Pampas region of Argentina, wheat became very popular, and it was still popular in the 20th century. So basically, certain regions took to certain foods, and certain foods caused dramatic geographic changes in both the Old and New World.
Those are some very good points. This was actually very different than the game last week about the triangular trade. The Columbian Exchange is very similar to the triangular trade, but still has remarkable differences. The Columbian Exchange was more of an unintended movement, whereas the triangular trade was more deliberate. The triangular trade involved 3 regions, Africa, Europe, and North America. However, the Columbian Exchange only involved 2, Europe and the Americas. One of the major differences was that the triangular trade had an entire leg dedicated to bringing in Africans for labor in the Americas. While the Columbian Exchange was for goods and diseases, the triangular trade also involved transporting different groups of people.
Interesting observation, Phoebe. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have time for tonight. Please tune in next week for another edition of Match of the Day. Good night.